Alright, this is my 10-gallon GBR tank, German Blue Ram tank. I've got a pair, or at least two Rams in here. I don't know if they're a pair yet or not. I started out with four, and they all actually turned out to be female. So I've, had to get some new ones, trade them back to the store. It's been a whole thing. And that's part of the reason why the tank is so bare, right? In the last breeding vlog, you probably saw me adding this new female to the tank and stuff, but it's just not been going super amazingly great. The two fish that are in here right now, I believe to be male and female. That said, one kind of bullies the other one a little bit. It's slowed down over time. Now they kind of hang out together, but there's still some aggression there, and they're still showing a little bit of stress coloration. So I'm not sure if that's to do with the tank, right? Because it's a pretty bare tank, just got some moss and some rock in there for cover, or if it's more due to just them being a little bit still new. So we're going to be planting the tank up today, so we're going to add some substrate, plant it with some low light plants. We might see if we can't throw another light on top there, because it's just one 5,000 Kelvin LED bulb right now, just a household style bulb. And from there, we're going to hopefully draw them out, get them into some better coloration, and I'm really hoping to start seeing some, male-female specific sex characteristics on these guys, because so far I've even asked people online and no one can seem to get a positive ID on either of them. So yeah, we're just going to do some cleaning. We have some blue-green algae on the rock and on the glass too. I'm thinking that's more due to where the tank is so bare, right? It doesn't really jive with my aquarium keeping style. I usually do planted tanks or, stuff like that. So hopefully, we'll scrape that off, add some plants in. If that doesn't take care of it, I've got some erythromycin I can use. That should knock it back pretty well, but, natural methods are always better. So without, talking too much, let's get going. I'll add the substrate in and you guys will get to watch that. Alright, so I'm kind of down on the floor. This tank is almost floor level, so I'm having to get real close down here. But basically, I'm just going to be adding this clay sand, right? It's just the Quikrete brand. I'm a big fan of it. Here in Kentucky, it tends to be a little bit coarser than it is in other places. It's still fine, but I find that, people always complain about how fine it is. I think that part of it is just due to where you're living. Maybe certain minerals in the ground are causing it to be thinner or finer because they don't ship this stuff long distances usually, so they're going to use whatever minerals are local to you to make it and sell it locally. So we're going to be adding this, and it's pre-rinsed. It's still going to make a heck of a cloud, I guarantee it. Yeah, well, that's not too bad. But this is going to be a really good, or in my opinion, it's a really good planting substrate. So we're gonna probably time lapse this. I'm just gonna, chime in with the finished product here. One thing to note with this substrate is that I'm using my hand because it is so fine that in a cup or a container, it actually just packs down to the bottom of the container when it gets wet. So that's why I'm using my hand. It's just a lot easier to get it into the tank. Alright, so that's the majority of the sand out of there. It's pretty much empty. We've got maybe an inch or so across the entire bottom of the tank, which for me is plenty. I know a lot of people like, 3 inches plus for planting. I'm not generally that kind of guy, but for this tank it'll be plenty. You can see the male ram, or I believe it's the male, hanging out down there. Like I said, they've been doing well. They're eating well. They're getting along relatively well. They're just not coloring up like I want them to. They could just be really low quality rams. I'm not sure. This is kind of outside my wheelhouse, but you can probably also really see all the blue-green algae on here. Like I said, hopefully that'll clear up once we get some plants in there. As far as the cloudiness, I'm not concerned about it. I've done plenty of tanks this way, never run into a problem. You do want to be careful with, not commonly used sand, so anything that you find is probably okay as long as it doesn't have any additives in it. Pool filter sand's great. Play sand is fine. People just don't like it because it's such a fine grain, but I don't mind it. And you even get the foam, not a big deal. And keep in mind, this was pre-rinse, right? So I've rinsed this several times in that bucket, and it still did this. So this tank is actually due for a water change anyway. So did this first. I'm gonna let it sit for a minute. Then we're gonna water change out about half the water. We still got some salt in here from where I was treating for ick. So we're going to change out half the water, make sure we do dilute that salt before we add the plants back in, and we'll go from there. Alright, so I kind of switched out that E26 base light, the LED, for this LED bar that came off of a old tank. It's just a basic stock light, but it'll be more than good enough for growing the plants I want to grow in here. It's just a basic daylight LED. Alright, so I went around and collected some plants from some tanks. So like in the Nubius here, this came out of my brackish tank, so it's just not been doing that well. I tried some plants in there, but they just didn't flourish, so I'm gonna put it in here, see if it recovers. I think it will. The rhizome is still healthy, it's just got tons of gunk on the leaves, so that it's naturally weighed down by a rock, so that's pretty cool. We also have this rhizome, basically. It's got two teeny tiny little leaves on there. Yeah, you guys can see that. It's just another Nubius. I think it was actually a split off this one. We're gonna put that guy in there as well, just to see if he'll start going back in. We've got some Java Fern Windelove, and I believe some different species of Vallisneria. So this is gonna be a pretty low light aquarium. I'm not going for like super crazy nutrient uptake or growth or anything. This is just simply to make the rams feel more comfortable and hopefully give the babies some things to graze on, if that ever comes to pass. This is a little teeny tiny crypt that has come out of my brackish tank that has a fairly large root system for the size plant that it is. So we're going to plant this guy in here and see if it does okay. And yeah, that is one con of this play sand substrate. It's kind of hard to plant in, especially when you've got something like this that's so small. But once you get it in there, they tend to do okay. They'll occasionally float up, but again, I don't find it to be nearly as bad as some people say it is. Some people say they float like crazy. Not in my experience. Put this Java Fern Windelove back up in here. It's a really good one. I love it when it gets real big. I've had them so big that they can take up the majority of like a 10-gallon tank. Very pretty plants. Then looks like we've got some Val here. This also, I believe this is some jungle Val. This also came out of my brackish tank. I've kind of given up on the plants in there for the time being. Also got this Java moss that you guys probably can't see, but there it is. I'll leave that in there. Yeah. There's actually a little crypt in all this moss here. Looks like maybe Cryptwin Deadeye. Cryptwin Deadeye Red, maybe? That's been in there for quite a while. Looks to be doing okay. Plot that guy down here next to the other little baby crypts. Those are like my favorite plants. Crypts are amazing. This looks like just some regular Vallisneria. Got a little baby on the runner there. I'll put that kind of back here behind the sponge filter next to the jungle Val. Well, we'll actually go kind of over here, I guess. More substrate. Again, I'm not going for like a super photogenic aquarium here. I'm going for a working tank. So having all these spots covered is not going to be the prettiest thing in the world, but it's going to be very effective. We've got a couple little pieces of Java Fern Windelove that came out of that brackish tank that aren't super healthy, so we'll just toss those in there too. That'll be that. Now I'm going to start filling it up with water. Alright guys, so it's the next day, about 24 hours after the last clip you saw, and the tank is cleared up for the most part. It's still a little bit foggy. I think that part of that is just all the gunk has kind of settled down onto the glass, so I'll clean it up the next time I'm in there. We do have a couple plants that have floated up, like in the back right corner, kind of over here. We've got a little bit of Vallisneria that didn't stay planted. I'll have to fix that. Of course, everything's kind of covered in a fine layer of just gunk. That is what it is. It's part of the substrate. You can see on the back, or in the left-hand side of the tank, we had a ram dart out there. They've been much more active ever since I did that. Ever since I've added the substrate. I do think having that plant in there really helps. I haven't seen any aggression, so like I said, I'm not a ram guy, not really a cichlid guy, so I'm not super well versed to this. So we're kind of learning as we go. But yeah, you can see that they're both out now. We'll kind of watch them for a second. The one on the front is the one that I'm fairly sure is a female. Then the one in the back, I'm thinking is probably the male. Let's see if I can zoom in. But yeah, they've been pretty cryptic so far. This is actually the most I've seen of them. I'm just kind of hanging out for quite a while. The bigger one in the back will chase the smaller one every now and then, but it's definitely declined. So I never see any shredded fins, never see any, actual aggression from the smaller guy. And they do a lot of that right there, darting around and straying up the bottom. So not necessarily the most exciting tank, but I do want to breed them if I get the chance. But yeah, that's it. Just kind of wanted to update you guys on the tank. I still have to do some stuff, like I got to get some acetone and wipe off the price tag that's still on the front of the tank in Sharpie. The cyanobacteria is still on there. That I think will go away in time. If it doesn't, we'll probably do a video on how to treat that with erythromycin. But hopefully you guys found this interesting. So that'll be it for me today.